Hello everyone, I welcome you back to our virtual learning class, children. Today we are going to study about social science, and in social science we are going to study political science. How social science is immensely important in our life, we have earlier discussed in the interaction session of social science. We have come to a conclusion, children, that without social science, there is no existence of any science in this world. So, before going ahead, let us start through our country, India, as politics means the political growth of any country across the globe. So, the word politics itself suggests that we are going to study more about the politicians, about their behavioral changes according to the situations they have faced in across the countries. Yes, but before going ahead, we all enjoy our freedom, children. Yes, this is a gift, a boon that has been given to us by our freedom strugglers, through our national leaders. Yes, we have to respect their sacrifice for us, as today we live in a freedom state, in a democratic country where we have choices to raise our voice on any of the concerns that we are not happy about, regarding, be it is human rights, be it is consumer rights. Everything is taken into consideration where we are following the democratic form of government. Even though there are major decisions that are taken by the government, but if the citizens, the people who elect their leader, if they are not happy, if they are not fulfilled with the decisions of the government, yes, they can come on, they can put their views ahead, they go on rallies, they put on marches, so that their message is being given to the government, and the actions regarding this is being taken. Recently we did see example of NRC. Yes, where we have to show our proof in being in India for the last 20 years. Yes, this was stopped, or this is in a pause state due to the current pandemic situation, children. So the freedom that has been granted to us as a boon through our national freedom leaders is to be appreciated, is to be understood. It has to be inculcated in our blood. Whatever we are seeing today or enjoying the freedom today, it is all because of them. So a big salute to those people because of whom we are surviving in our democratic country, children. Going ahead, we are going to study the first chapter of politics of standard 9. Let us slide ahead, children, to see what the topic is all about. So here we are to the first chapter, children. The topic's name is What is Democracy and Why Democracy? In the previous slide, we did understand the meaning of democracy, how blessed we are to be part of India and its democracy, part of India's constitution. Yes. So what is democracy? To enjoy your freedom, to enjoy your religion, to enjoy your rights, being it any rights. Yes. Why democracy? Why democracy is important? Why that particular freedom that has been given is important to you as the citizen of India, as it abides the rules and regulation of our constitution. Yes. there are many countries around the globe, children, those who do not follow the complete system of democracy. We can take example of North Korea, where the people in that particular country are not allowed to travel from their country anywhere anywhere. So, being in India, we have that full-fledged freedom that we can travel across the globe because it is granted, it is the freedom that our constitution and the rights that have given us the choice to make our choices and enjoy the freedom so freely that we are blissful to have the democratic state in our country as well. So sliding ahead, children, where we have understood the importance of democracy, what is democracy and why democracy is important in our life, let us see the major aspects of democracy. What are the major aspects of it? Where did the word democracy originate from? We are going to study that. What is democracy? In detail, we are going to study in the coming slides with the meaning and definition of democracy and the 4 features of democracy. So, going ahead, we are going to see a small short video before concluding to our slides in order for you to understand the concept of democracy. So let's slide ahead, children.
The word democracy comes from the Greek words of demos, which means people, and kratos, which means power or rule. So democracy basically means the rule of the people. Democracy first started as a direct democracy in Greek cities, notably ancient Athens, where people came together to speak about their concerns and opinions in front of rulers of the city-state and directly voted on new rules and laws. Here is considered as the birthplace of democracy. For the very first time, decisions were made by the people instead of rulers. But sadly, the ancient Greeks did not see all people equally. Slaves, women, children, and the people who did not have a land weren't allowed to vote. This is what we call a flawed democracy today. After the Greeks lost their power and influence in the 1st century AD, their early forms of democracy were also fading away until the Magna Carta was signed in 1215, which prevented the King of England to do whatever he wanted and said that even the king had to follow the country's rules and laws which were written in the Constitution. Today, most democracies are indirect or representative, which means that you can't vote for a new law yourself, but you can vote for people who then become lawmakers and present your interests. But democracy isn't just about voting. It's about everything to protect the best interests of the people, no matter what is their race, gender, political opinion, or religion. These interests can be human rights, quality of life, infrastructure, and many more. Modern democracies divide power into 3 different branches: the legislative, the people who make the law; the executive, the people who make sure that you obey the law; and the judiciary, who judge you if you commit a crime. These 3 are independent and work following the process, checks and balances, which means all the work must be clear and fair. And very important, the people who have power also must follow the law and not exceed their authority. In addition, a democratic government must work in a way that reflects the wish, feeling, desire, and values of the society that it governs. This is also known as the general will, which is a concept developed by the famous Swiss philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. One of the problems of democratic voting is that the biggest groups of people always have the most power, and that's why a good democracy also has laws to protect the rights of its smaller and weaker groups. A democracy where the majority chooses to separate, expel, or injure its minority is not a functioning democracy. So, what do you think now about democracy? Winston Churchill once said, "Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." Do you agree?
So, through the video played in the last slide, you might have understood the word democracy's meaning, the concept, the conceptualization, the meaning of democracy. Yes, the origination of the word democracy. So here again we will have a quick recap that the word democracy has been derived by the Greek word demos, that means people, we citizens, and kratos, that means power, the person we are electing who will go in power, and the person who will rule us. Yes. Now, under democracy, like what is democracy? We have a simple definition to give the frame for the word democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people, that is by the citizens of the country. Now, in the coming slides, children, what we are going to see is even if we have the right to vote for our own candidates to rule us, what comes under it is who are the rulers, what kind of election is going to be conducted for the candidate to win, who are the people we will see in the coming slides, and what kind of a form of government is been formed after taking into consideration the last 3 points, that is who are the real rulers, what kind of election, and who are the people. We will see through the coming slides, we will get the answers for these questions through our coming slides, children. As defined by Abraham Lincoln, the definition of democracy says, democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So here we get a new form of definition defined by the US President, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. So let us slide ahead, children, to understand in detail how democracy played a vital role in shaping the the destiny of the countries in the form of examples, which we'll go and see ahead in the slides. So in this slide, children, we are going to see the features of democracy. The features, what democracy consists in itself and what it has to offer us. Going with the first point, in a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those who are elected by the people. So the common man has no rights to come to any final decision. For example, if we take the state Maharashtra, our CM is Honorable Chief Minister Mr. Uddhav Thackeray. So if he is facing any problem to handle the situation, the pandemic situation of coronavirus, say, he can consult and take opinion of our Prime Minister Shri Honorable Narendra Modi. So here the final decision is taken by the people, those we have elected. Going with the second point, a democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. Yes, we all know from our period of independence, we had Congress Party ruling India for the last 70 years. We had a breakthrough when in 2014, the Bharatiya Janata Party, they won the election and Shri Narendra Modi became our Prime Minister. So this goes to the second phase of democracy where free and fair election is being conducted in which the current power, for example, before 2014, the current power was in hands of the Congress Party and BJP had a fair chance of winning. and then the Congress lost. So this example goes to the second feature of democracy. Third, in a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote, and each vote must have one value. This is very well versed point because in our country this type of elections are being conducted where even one vote matters a lot. So after the age of 18 we become adult citizen and we have the right to vote and to choose the candidate, the person who can rule the country very well, who can solve our problem on behalf of us in a more global manner. Getting to the fourth point of the feature of democracy, a democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizens' right. If a prime minister has each and every right to change any of the decisions that has been even made by the state government, yes, but he has his own limits as well. He has to abide, he has to take the constitutional law in his decision making, and the citizens' right is been taken into consideration at the same point of view. So if prime minister want to pass any of his decision to the citizens, it has to go with the constitutional laws as well as the citizens' right too. Then the you know the decision that has been passed has been accepted by the people. So even the prime minister has his own limits by following the constitutional law along with the citizens' right. So here we can see the fourth major feature of democracy that helps enjoying freedom of the citizens or those belong to the particular country. For example, India. Our country is a very huge democratic country where we have the choice to follow any kind of religion, to follow any type of God, to speak any kind of language. So it is very blissful to live in a country like India. So let's slide ahead, children. So in this slide, children, we are going to study the examples of the features which we studied in the last slide. So starting with the first feature, in a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. So taking this first feature into consideration, we have been presented by an example that the incident occurred in Pakistan. So let's go through. In Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf led a military coup in October 1999. Military coup, the word coup means the sudden or violent overthrow of an existing government. Existing government, the government which was running at that particular time, he overthrew that government by a small military group. At that particular time, the country Pakistan was being ruled by the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. So he evacuated the place of the PM Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the year 1999 by getting a small group of military into the power into that particular situation. He overthrew a democratically elected government. So Mr. Nawaz Sharif was being elected by the citizens of Pakistan, and they were following democracy at that period of time. So this man, Mr. Musharraf, he came into picture, he overthrew the democratically elected government and declared himself the chief executive, that is the leader of the country. He evacuated the place of Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, in the year 1999. Later, he changed his designation to president, and in 2002, he held a referendum. Referendum is election, children, where the people voted for him. He held a referendum in the country, that is Pakistan, that granted him a 5-year extension. So going ahead, Pakistani media, human rights organization, and democracy activists said that the referendum, that is the election, was based on malpractices and fraud, that is through cheating. In August 2002, he issued a legal framework order that amended the constitution of Pakistan. So he changed the rules and regulation that was been written earlier in the constitution of Pakistan. So according to this order, he issued a legal framework order, right? He made some changes in that part. So according to that order, the president, that is himself, right? The president can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. So he increased his power by himself. The work of the civilian cabinet is supervised by a National Security Council, which is dominated by military officers. So you can see, even though Pervez Musharraf was been elected by the citizens of Pakistan, he made a free will to make a change in the constitution of Pakistan. Yes, he illegally attacked Mr. Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He occupied his place. Yes, then he made changes in the Pakistan constitution, where he issued the legal framework order. He made some changes where he had the right to dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. So the work of this civilian cabinet is supervised by a National Security Council. That particular group, National Security Council, and that particular group, that was dominated by the military officers, the same military coup who attacked the former Prime Minister of Pakistan and whose place Musharraf had then taken. After passing this law, the legal framework order, after passing this law, elections were held to the national and provincial assemblies. So Pakistan has had elections. Elected representatives have some powers. So the power which he got, right? He got an extension of a 5-year by the vote he got from the Pakistan citizens. Taking that into consideration, he manipulated, he changed the legal framework order that was written in the constitution of Pakistan. Next, what did he do? He dissolved the earlier national and provincial assemblies, children. Clear? Then, after passing this law, he held new elections for the members to be elected in the national and provincial assemblies. After doing that, Pakistan had elections and they elected representatives as well. But the representatives had some powers. They had some powers, but the final power rested with the military officers and General Musharraf himself. So you can see the complete democratic system is not being issued over here. Whatever the decision is, even though the people have elected, the people's point of view is not taken into consideration. Neither the provincial or national assemblies view is not taken into consideration. Whatever work is done is been supervised by the military officers, and the last decision only stays with the military officers and General Musharraf. So this uh, part of democracy, we cannot call it as entire democracy, where the people's consideration and their views is not taken into picture. You can see this happens in many dictatorships and monarchies. Dictatorship where we have only one king to rule, and monarchies, yes, where they have only a single person to rule, where they have not where they don't have a democratic freedom to follow children. So these people, the dictators and the people in monarchies, they formally have an elected parliament and government. Formally, just for namesake, they have an elected parliament and government, but the real power is with those who are not elected. This cannot be people's rule. Clear? So this gives us the first feature. In a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. I hope you have got the clear picture of the example that happened in Pakistan, and that is related and given as an example to match with our first feature. So let us slide ahead. So the second feature goes for the free and fair electoral competition, children. You remember we had spoken about Congress being in power and then BJP coming into power, right? So here let's take an example of China, as stated in the textbook. So in China, elections are regularly held after 5 years for electing the country's parliament, called Quangu Remen Daibo Dahui, that is National People's Congress. Here they are having the election, regular election in every 5 years, where the country's parliament is called the National People's Congress. The National People's Congress has the power to appoint the president of the country. It has nearly 3,000 members elected from all over China. So this particular party, it has the power to appoint the president of the country, that is China. And this particular National People Congress, it has nearly 3,000 members in it. And these members are elected from all over China. Some of these members are elected by the army as well. So what are the rules they are going to follow when the president is being elected? How a president is being elected in their country? Let's see. So before contesting elections, a candidate, a person who is contesting the election, a candidate needs the approval of the Chinese Communist Party. It is not just like that. If a candidate wishes, he can stand in oppose of anyone. No, he literally needs the approval of the Chinese Communist Party. Only those who are the members of the Chinese Communist Party or 8 smaller parties allied to it. Allied means connected to it. The other 8 smaller parties have been connected to the Chinese Communist Party, were allowed to contest elections held in 2002, in the year 2002 and 2003. The government is always formed by the Communist Party. So the people who stand for the election, the candidate, he has not been given the freedom of standing in the election in a more individual manner, in a more independent manner. No, the terms and conditions are he has to belong to the Chinese Communist Party, and he needs the approval of the Chinese Communist Party, or else he has to be amongst the 8 other small parties that has been tied or allied to the Chinese Communist Party. So this is the condition. So in China, the elections do not offer the people any serious choice. As I told you, nobody can go and just stand in the election. It has always been pre-planned. They have to choose the ruling party and the candidates approved by it. So in India, we all know anybody can, contest the election who have the knowledge or who has a previous experience in politics. But here, these people have to approve the candidate, and that particular candidate has to be the part of that particular party. Clear, children? So here, the people of China, they had no choice, but they had to choose the candidate of the ruling party itself. So this is the first example where the free and fair electoral competition feature does not go. Let us slide ahead. The second example of the free and fair electoral system is of Mexico, children. Earlier we studied about China. Here we have the example of Mexico. So let us see what happens in Mexico. Since its independence in 1930, Mexico holds election after every 6 years to elect its president. In China, it was 5 years. In Mexico, it is 6 years. The country has never been under a military or dictator's rule, but until the year 2000, every election was won by a party called PRI, that is Institutional Revolutionary Party. PRI means Institutional Revolutionary Party. So let's see how this party works, children. Opposition parties did contest elections. For example, if BJP is contesting elections, the Congress had the right to contest elections. Yes, over here, the opposition parties, they did have the right to contest the elections, but never managed to win. The PRI was known to use many dirty tricks to win the elections, that is malpractices, cheating. They applied all the cheating methods, the dirty tricks to win the elections. All those who were employed in government offices had to attend its party meetings. So how they managed to win? Clear? So all those who were employed in government offices at that particular time, they had the compulsion to attend the meetings of the Institutional Revolutionary Party in a compulsory manner. Then the second thing they did was, teachers of government schools used to force parents to vote for PRI. So eventually the parents had no choice to accept the decision, the order passed by the government. Media largely ignored the activities of the opposition political parties except to criticize them. Even today, we have channels, those who criticize the opposition party, and those who put up only the plus points of the ruling party. It happens. Sometimes the polling booths were shifted from one place to the another in the last minute, so that the polling, that is the area where you go to put your vote, to cast your vote, that particular box is being, taken away in the last minute, so that it gets the activity gets disturbed, and the person, he has no choice of casting his vote to the other party. So sometimes the polling booths were shifted from one place to another in the last minute, which made it difficult for the people to cast their votes. The PRI spent a large sum of money in the campaign for its candidates. Campaigning is what advertising its candidates. Even in India, we see if the people are standing in election, a tempo has been hired or a rickshaw has been hired, they put loudspeakers on it, and it just roams around the streets, so that we get to know about the candidates before the elections happen. So a much amount of money was being invested in the campaigning. In the Mexican example, people seemed to really have a choice, but in practice, they had no choice. Even though they had a choice to vote for the opposition party children, the polling booths were taken away, correct, as they have stated. Second, the government people were forced, say the government teachers, the government officers were forced to attend the meetings, and the teachers pressurize the parents to vote for the institutional revolutionary party. Here, when we see the elections are held every 6 years, which is a part of the democratic country, but they are not following the rules of being a democratic country. So people, they did not have any choice. There was no way the ruling party could be defeated, even if people were against it. These are not fair elections. Yes, even though people are, against it, if a party manages to win, and after that, if the people are against it, no actions are being taken, nothing. So this kind of elections are not been counted under the fair elections, and not the part of democracy as well. So here we come to the second feature to our understanding of democracy. A democracy must be based on a free and fair election, where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. I hope the first and second feature is clear with you, children. Let's go ahead with the third feature. So here we come to our third feature, children. One person, one vote, one value. So in our country, we have one person, one vote, one value. After the age of 18, when a person becomes adult, that person's vote has to be counted. Has he has become an adult, he has the right to vote, and the value of that vote should be counted as the decision of that particular person and for the candidate he is voting for. So let us go through the points. The struggle for democracy was linked to the demand for universal adult franchise. So in this, children, the struggle for democracy was linked to the demand for universal adult franchise. Means when this was granted, when this was started, the women, the slaves, the poor people, the scheduled caste people were not allowed to participate in the elections. But later on, the universal adult franchise had a revolution. Then after, the women, the poor people, the scheduled caste people were allowed to vote. So this principle has now come to be accepted almost all over the world. Yet there are many instances, examples of denial, of not giving, of equal right to vote. Even today, students, we get to see the Dalits are being beaten up, for some or the other reason. That has to not happen in any part of our country. The scheduled castes are not been respected, the tribes are not been respected. That has not to happen in any part of the world. Actually, we had an example of the recent death of Floyd. What happened was wrong. They had a march for the justice for Floyd, because how he had been treated by the police was very wrong at that part of time, because due to the segregation of thoughts of the white Americans and the black Americans. This happened, this gave the rise to the mentality of the people that all people should be seen equal in front of democracy. So this happened recently in America, children. So taking that as example, yes, there is the denial of equal right not to vote, but the behavior that had happened with Floyd actually. So coming back to India, the people are today to denied for the right to vote. So this should not happen. The second example, in Saudi Arabia, women do not have the right to vote. It is in the country where their constitution has no place for the women, and they have no right to vote. So they are all humans, right? In fact, we all are humans, and we all should be treated equally in front of a law, constitution, everything. The third example, Estonia had made its citizenship rules in such a way that people belonging to Russian minority find it difficult to get the right to vote. So the people who have the Estonian citizenship, they can vote in a very fair manner, but the people belonging to the Russian minority, these people find it difficult to vote because they find it difficult to get the right to vote. The fourth example, in Fiji, the electoral system is such that the vote of an indigenous Fiji has more value that of an Indian Fijian. So again, the um, origin matters. Yes, where is your original origin from? Are you a real Fijian, or are you a combination of Indian and the Fijian family? So the indigenous, the pure Fijian gets the value of the vote more than the Indian Fijian in that particular country. So democracy is based on fundamental principle of political equality, children. Politics has to be equal. The rules and regulations are to be equal for each and everybody. Everyone who is enrolled, say right from the Prime Minister to the common man, has to abide the rules of constitution, and this happens in India and the countries those who are completely democratic as well. That gives us the third feature of democracy. In a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote, and each vote must have one value. So let us slide ahead. Fourth feature of democracy, that is rule of law and a respect for rights. Let us study in this slide about the rule of law. Zimbabwe attained independence from white minority rule in 1980. Since then, the country has been ruled by ZANU-PF, the party that led the freedom struggle. So this particular party, it fought for the black people who belonged to Zimbabwe and who managed to free them from the white minority who ruled over them in the year 1980. At that point of time, the party was being ruled by Mr. Robert Mugabe. The ZANU-PF party was ruled by Robert Mugabe, and he had a chance to rule after the white minorities were been vanished by this particular party. So Robert Mugabe has been ruling the country since independence. Elections have been held regularly and always won by ZANU-PF. President Mugabe is popular but also uses unfair practices in elections. Again, it is against the conduct of a rule of law, where unfair practices and malpractices are not allowed to win any election. So over the years, his government has changed the constitution several times. We did study this about the example given in the Pakistan, the first feature which we studied about, where even the President Musharraf, he made some constitutional changes regarding the legal framework, right? So same way, this man, Robert Mugabe, the president of the Zimbabwe, he changed the constitution several times to increase the power of the president and make him less accountable. Means, on one hand, he was increasing his power, but he was less accountable to it. For example, he has the prime power to pass on the decisions, but on the other hand, if earthquake occurs in Zimbabwe, say, he is not accountable to that. Like, he has made the rules in such a way that he is not part of that particular calamity that had occurred. He is not going to come and view and solve any of the problem. As we saw, we had that Amphan cyclone where it had a bad hit on West Bengal and Calcutta and Odisha. We saw our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, where he examined the areas under calamities because he is more accountable. He is concerned about our country. So he had look about the the view of the worst areas, and he funded a certain amount to the state. But here, whatever happens, Mr. Mugabe is less accountable. He is not putting himself into the risk of whatever happens. The next point, opposition party workers are harassed and their meeting is always disrupted. So again, it is against the law. Public protests and demonstrations against the government are declared illegal. But here in India, we are allowed to protest, we are allowed to march for the decisions that is not accepted by us. There is a law that limits the right to criticize the president. We just saw that he made some changes in the constitution, right? So he made a law where there is a limit to criticize the president. You cannot openly come and criticize the president the way you want. He made a law of that. Television and radio are controlled by the government and give only the ruling party's version. Yes, the same example we saw in the last slide, correct, where only the ruling party's examples were given, the PRI party, which we studied about. So Only the ruling party's version was been shown, only their side was been shown, the opposition side was never been shown. There are independent newspapers, but the government harasses those journalists who go against it. So even the journalists are not allowed to write anything against the Mugabe government. The government has ignored some court judgments that went against it and has pressurized the judges to change the judgment. So even the legal procedures, the law was not been respected by the Mugabe government. The example of Zimbabwe shows that popular approval of the rulers is necessary in a democracy, but it is not sufficient. Even if a person is popular, but he is not efficient, is not taking the accountability for any of the situations arising, he is of no use. So that particular thing, his popularness is not sufficient to rule that particular country. Popular governments can be undemocratic, as we saw in the examples that went behind. Popular leaders can be autocratic. Clear, children? Autocratic, where they take their own decisions and put their own decisions onto the citizens' head. So the citizens have no right to rule. So let's slide ahead and see the respect for rights, children. So the fourth feature of democracy also consists the respect of rights of citizens, children. Let us go through the points. If we wish to access a democracy, it is important to look at the elections, but it is equally important to look before and after the elections. Yes, if you want to be a part of the democracy, if you want a certain position, you have to be accountable not only before the elections but after the elections as well. You have to be efficient after the elections as well if you are into power. There should be sufficient room for normal political activity, including political opposition as well, in the period before elections. So here they are stating that both the parties should be treated equally and equal opportunity should be given to them before the election. Sufficient room where the one party is not harassing the other party. Both are given equal importance before the elections. This requires that the state should respect some basic rights of the citizens. Yes. So our rights are been well known to us. So the state has to come to declaration where this particular point of conducting the normal political activity has to be taken into consideration before the elections. Because of which the common people come to understand more about the candidate in that period. So the third point, they should be free to think, to have opinions, to express these in public, to form associations, to protest and take other political action. Everyone should be equal in the eyes of law. So they should be free to think, to have opinions, to express this in public, to form associations, to protest and take other political actions. So all these things, this all should be equal in the eyes of law. Everything has to be taken into consideration according to the constitutional point of view. These rights must be protected by an independent judiciary whose orders are obeyed by everyone. So, for example, if a thief has been caught by the police, he is not directly given the imprisonment. If the crime is severe, obviously FIR has been registered and he has been taken to court, and whatever judgment the judge passes, the action is been taken accordingly. Going to the next point, similarly, there are some conditions that apply to the way a government is run after elections. A democratic government cannot do whatever it likes simply because it has won an election. It has to respect some basic rules. As I told you in the earlier slides about PM Modi, even if he has the prime power to change any of the rules and regulations of the country, but he has to abide through the citizens' rights and the constitutional guidelines before taking any decision for the citizens. The next point, in particular, it has to respect some guarantees to the minorities, as we discussed earlier. The scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe people have to be given the equal respect and the equal state of being a human, as they are not treated equally. So there, in their role, this has to be considered as well as a major part. Every major decision has to go through a series of consultants. For example, if a prime minister has to take any decision, he cannot take directly. He will consult the state government and then proceed ahead. Every office bearer has certain rights and responsibilities assigned by the constitution and the law. So we have various departments. The RBI has been handled by a certain officer. A finance department has been handled by our finance minister. Yes, so everyone has their certain rights and responsibilities. Each of this is accountable not only to the people but also to the independent officials. So they are responsible not only to the people but they are accountable to their belonging officials as well. So the people who have been put into sequence have to report their particular seniors so that the political works run smoothly. So both these aspects, that is the respect for the law and rights of the citizens, both these aspects gives the fourth and final feature of the democracy, that is a democratic government rules within limits set by the constitutional law and citizens' rights. Clear, children? So today we have studied the concept of democracy, the origination of the word democracy, from where it has emerged, the four features of democracy along with the examples taken into consideration. So in the next coming lecture, we are going to study why democracy is important for a country to run in a more smoother manner. So let us slide ahead. For joining me in this online session of our political science class. I hope you have enjoyed the first half session of the lesson. What is democracy? Why democracy? So it's your SST teacher telling bye on behalf of Surrey School. We will meet in our next lecture where we will study why democracy is important. Until then, take care. Be well. Thank you, children.